Hey everyone, welcome back to the vlog. Today, this is quite a special one today actually. I'm walking through a nondescript field in the middle of Aberdeenshire. Nobody would look twice at this place, but there's something quite special about it. There's a castle up ahead that not many people know about. And it's especially special to me. I could have worded that better. It's especially relevant and exciting to me because back in the day, I'll tell you the story, way back in the day when I was a child, my grandparents used to visit every Saturday. They lived about 45 or 50 minutes away, but they would visit every week. And one of the highlights of their visit was the evening story times, the bedtime stories. My grandma would come through first and she would tell us one of the classic fairy tales, a Disney story, a Hans Christian Andersen, you know, a Snow White, a Cinderella, something like that. We could request whichever one we wanted and she would tell it off the top of her head. And that was great. But it got especially exciting when it was my granda's turn to come through. She would go back through the house to the living room and she would send my granda and he would come through, and we got super excited when it was his turn because we knew that he was going to give us the next chapter of the Fergie saga. Now Fergie's a character that he created. One second, I've got to get over this fence somehow and I've got to help the dogs get over this fence. Yeah, so every week we'd get this next chapter of the Fergie story, the Fergie saga. Fergie was a Scottish nobleman as far as we can make out, and he had been to war. I don't know what war, I don't know what century this was in, probably like the 17th, 18th kind of centuries, I'm not too sure. But he was a Scottish nobleman, he lived in a castle, and underneath the castle was this kind of village or town. And every week, he was kind of like a Scottish Zorro kind of figure, I think is probably the best way to describe it. I think he had an eye mask, I'm not too sure. And he had a horse and he had a sword and a castle and all this kind of stuff. And every week, this saga, the next chapter of the story would begin in the same way, with a distressed villager coming to the castle to knock on the door to ask for Fergie's help because there's some baddie, they're under threat, there's some invasion, something like that, and they need Fergie's help. And at that point, Fergie would get onto his horse and he would ride out across the drawbridge and down into the village or the town, and he would save the day and he'd rescue the people and he'd beat up the bad guys and all that kind of stuff. And we absolutely loved the Fergie stories. They were so great. And he also used to add these sound effects as well, which made it extra atmospheric and evocative. So one of the things he used to do is whenever the villager approached the door to knock on it, he would add this knocking sound effect on the underside of the bedside table. So he'd kind of knock on it, and you knew that when the knock came, that's when it was about to get exciting, because he was about to rush out in his horse and he was about to go into the village and do whatever needed to be done that day. So that was the key moment when you heard the knock, or the chap on the door as he used to say. And anyway, we didn't know if this was a real guy, we didn't know if it was kind of inspired by anything or if he just made it up in his head. We didn't know anything about it. It was only years and years later that he told my mum that it was actually based on this castle. He'd come to this castle and he'd seen it and it had kind of inspired this story. And ever since then, I thought, you know what, I've got to go and visit Fergie's castle. That would be such a special, amazing thing. And here it is, in the middle of nowhere, largely unknown, unseen, hidden. It's Fergie's castle. I think one of the things that makes it extra intriguing is that when you Google for the actual real information regarding this place, there isn't much going around. I think it was owned by the Chain family, Chain, and then it passed to the Keiths. But then I'm not sure what happened after that. I'm trying to think back, because I did have a little look before I came out to see if I could find anything interesting, but I can't really remember anything. So that's a window in there. I think Ollie and Rafa have just jumped through a window and they managed to get inside that way. That might have to be how I get in as well. No, maybe not. It is very overgrown, as you can see here. I wouldn't fancy trying to wade through all of that, so all of those are nettles. Oh, but here we are. We were making our way, oops, I just caught on that tree. But this is us now inside Fergie's castle. It's extremely dilapidated. I'm gonna have to get a photograph of chapping at a door, or pretending to chap at a door, if there is a door. But here we are. And that's the view down to the river where we just were. Oh, there's the door there. Fergie's front door. All these ferns are going to have ticks on them. I'm not sure the dogs are going to come back from this one unscathed. I'm going to have to do a check when we get back to the car. But this is Fergie's front door. It's quite a big place actually. I can see why he was inspired. This is maybe the most impressive side. What's that in there? Looks like it's the dungeon, the prison. I think the walls are remarkably thick as far as I remember. Did I hear 11 feet? Would that be right? Something like that. We've got some gun loops down here. For the fact that it's almost completely forgotten about in the middle of a woodland, and it's not cared for by anybody. I don't think Historic Scotland have got it, or anybody like that. Ugh. Just walked into a cloud of midges. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to walk up to the front door, and then I'm going to chap on it. And Fergie comes. There's supposed to be a drawbridge here. We don't have a drawbridge. Maybe there was a drawbridge back in the day. And then we walk inside, and we're confronted with his entry hall. That's a big fireplace there. And then if you come through here, there's quite a large tower here. I think it would have been quite a formidable fortress back in the day. I mean, it has been heavily destroyed over the years, but you can see that it's, even in this condition, that there was something of a warren of different places. Let's see if we climb up here. Ooh, it's a bit of a drop down there, pups. Let's see if we look in here, if there's anything we can find. No, not really. Okay, I think that's pretty much it. I'm going to turn off the camera and just wander about, and again soak in the fact that I'm in Fergie's castle.